Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Last week in episode 27, we interviewed Dr. Gary Kracoff. And today, we're actually going to be interviewing Lisa, who is working with him currently. She was a software consultant and an entrepreneur. But you're going to hear how having a medical procedure done where she was given benzos and Vicodin to endure the procedure, how she became very, very ill. Yet in working with Gary, he helped to turn her health around so that she can now successfully finish her taper. And I want to mention that in no way are we saying that the only way to get better is to work with a functional medicine doctor and to take supplements, because some people cannot take anything. And some people can just taper and don't have a problem. They can just eat what they want and they don't take supplements, while others do have some injury because of the drugs like Lisa did. So please don't take this as we're saying this is the only way to get better. There are many ways to get better. Please stay tuned after the podcast for the post-show talk. Thank you. Hi, Lisa, and welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you doing this today because I know you're not always feeling great, but you're a heck of a lot better since you started to work with Dr. Gary Kracoff.
That's for sure.
So I want to let people know how you and I met. I actually, online, I got an email from Dr. Christy Huff because she knew I was in Massachusetts and you're in Massachusetts and you had a doctor that was about to cut you off of your meds. And she was like, can you help find her a doctor? And I'm trying to call different places when I thought, how can I get her a doctor? Well, let's get one that doesn't believe that there's a problem with these drugs. And that's how we got you, your doctor. And we gave you the doctor, and I'm going to let you take it from there as to how sick you were and what he did to start helping you.
Okay, great. So I don't know how, but I Googled the doctor's name and his cell phone appeared, and I didn't realize it was his cell phone, and he answered. Well, no, I'm sorry. I left a message first, and I explained to him the situation and how urgent it was, and I only had a few more days left of the month before my PCP was going to not just cut me off, but fire me as a patient. So I would have no care at all.
Mm-hmm.
And within 5 minutes, he called me back. And he said that your message disturbed me so much. And could I come into the office the very next day? Which I thought was unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah,
what doctor gets you an appointment the next day? And
right.
what doctor tells you your story is so upsetting that I haven't slept all night thinking about this. And it's infuriating me that this has happened to you. So I get to his office the next day and I get there early and he's ready for me a half hour early. Another like a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained to
Because
him,
I want people to know you were very, very ill and it was hard for you even to get in town Boston.
oh, I was 96 pounds of skin and bones. I riding in a car, the vibration would be agonizing, and I have a neck injury. I had surgery, and the reason why I was put on the benzo in the first place was in order to avoid the surgery. I tried a less invasive approach with regenerative medicine, and in order to get those procedures, which included 4-inch needles deep into my spine, hundreds of them. What they did to treat me for the procedure was give me Xanax and Vicodin, and I was to use it after the procedure until I started feeling better, and then go back for the next procedure 4 weeks later. So I was basically on it for 3 weeks, off for a week, on for 3 weeks, off for a week since 2013.
So
Not
talk about kindled.
having no idea that this was harming me. And nobody mentioned a word to me about it, and I had no clue that this would happen when I tried to taper off of it. And I had tapered off of, I had been hospitalized for my neck injury and had surgery, and I tapered off of opiates and many muscle relaxers, and I never had any problem tapering off of anything, but I couldn't get below 3.75 milligrams of Xanax. I was totally bedridden. I couldn't eat. I was vomiting. My mouth was burning. My entire insides were burning from my tongue tasted like metal, Everything burnt from my throat all the way down through my digestive tract to the very bottom. And it was agonizing. And every time I ate anything, I would vomit. So when I finally got to this wonderful doctor who took me in, he listened to my story and he said, I am so disgusted that doctors don't know how to taper people off of these drugs, but they're so readily easily, they so easily write the prescription and they have no clue. He said, you have suffered. He said, I am so sorry. You have suffered unnecessarily. And I, I don't even want to hear more of your story because I am so upset by the tragedy that's happened to you. He said, I will completely support you. He said, you have to stop the taper right now or you're going to die. Um, and then he turned around and he looked at my CVS history to write me a prescription. And he kept shaking his head saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. He said, you really would die if you had continued tapering at this faster rate. This doctor has no idea what he's doing. You absolutely have to stop tapering until you get stronger, until you gain a lot more weight. And your body's going to tell us what the rate of the taper is. I'm not going to tell you, and I'm the chief of psychiatry at Tufts University, and I've worked here for 40 years. I can't tell your body how to taper off of this. You can't tell your body. You can't go by a schedule. Your body has to tell you by how it feels. And you've suffered so much and you're so sick that we have to make this less painful for you. You don't the way you've suffered. We can taper you very slowly. And he used an analogy that really made me feel better. He said, this is a marathon, but there is no timing to it. It's not a sprint. So what's been happening is this doctor has been sprinting you through a very dangerous taper that you could have a seizure and die from at any minute. And we're going to stop that right now. I'm going to support you completely, and we'll take as long as we need, and your body's going to be the lead. And if it feels sick, we don't taper, we stop. And you don't taper again until your body says it's feeling good because it's strong. And I don't know how long it'll take, um, but I will be with you and I'll stand by your side the whole time.
Good. And he now, at this point, he discovers something because you tell him about the burning that you're having.
So I begin to I tell him about my symptoms. And, as I follow up with him, we have phone calls and COVID comes. And, um, at one point he said, you're, I don't think your symptoms are withdrawal. I think they're something else. And I know it's so hard for you to get to the hospital, but I'm going to have to ask you to come in. So I went to the hospital to see him, and my face would look like I was beat up. My face would swell every day. My eyelids practically shut. And he looked at me and he said, "You're having an allergic reaction. This definitely isn't withdrawal. I can tell just by looking at you." And so I called up my pharmacist, and he thought that I could potentially be allergic to the generic version of Xanax called alprazolam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where his mind went. But when I talked to my pharmacist, she said, first of all, my insurance company wouldn't cover the brand name and it would be about $800 for a month's worth. And
See.
so she did some research and she found that the generic brand that I was taking had an inert ingredient called crossporidine, which is it's similar to a drug like MSG that has 100 different names, and it is made of formaldehyde. And so she found a different generic that did not contain crossporidine, and The metal taste in my mouth went away, and the burning eventually went away. But I was still having a horrible headache, like headache of a 10 plus all the time. And so she looked further into the generic, and it had another inert ingredient called microcystilline cellulose, which is made of chopped up trees. And I'm allergic to trees. I'm allergic to every tree I've ever been tested for my whole life.
Hmm.
And um, when she gave me a different drug that didn't have the microcystilline cellulose in it, the very first pill I took of it, my headache was gone. And
Excellent.
I called her up and said, like, could could that possibly be true? And she's like, well, let's see. And a week later, and now it's months and months and months later, I don't have headaches from the medication I'm on, and I'm 50% through my taper, um, and the headache's gone. It was, I mean, logic leads us to believe that it has to have been that inert ingredient, because now that I'm not taking it, I don't have the symptom.
Right, which is something that I had discussed with Gary Kracoff when we did the interview with him, because if people are very, very sick, look at the inert ingredients in your brand. Maybe it's just a different one will stop a lot of the suffering. It's not like all your suffering went away. That was one part of the key factor. And then you and I were talking one day, and I mentioned Gary, and you said, "Oh, I used to know Gary years ago too," and now comes working with him. So now this is the next part of your healing that starts to take place so that you can go from bedridden
Yep.
to functioning better.
Yep, absolutely. So I had my first call with Gary, and we talked about whether, we wanted to, just try a bunch of supplements that we thought might help and waste time and money, or did I want to invest the money up front and get a DNA test and a stool sample to find out exactly what was causing what the root cause of my symptoms were. And then we could treat me more effectively and financially and physically.
Mhm.
So I had those two tests, and based on the results of those two tests, we found out that, first of all, I had leaky gut, and no matter what I ate, the nutrients weren't going they weren't feeding my cells and my mitochondria. And the DNA test confirmed that, because I had a little blip on one of the genes. And so by putting the puzzle together with the DNA and the stool sample results, he could give me a plan of action of a set of homeopathic and especially lymphatic system drainage, and a couple of supplements that could address the root cause. And the way he explained it, it's like a domino effect. So yeah, we can give you a supplement for every one of your symptoms and every one of the DNA things that's wrong with you, but why not start at the very bottom, at the very root cause, and fix that first and see what happens, because that may be just what it needs to fix everything else.
So,
And
a quick question, Lisa. Did you get sick from taking anything that Gary recommended for you?
nothing,
Right.
absolutely nothing.
Because
No.
it was specific for you. And he also uses extremely pure brands, things that you cannot buy, even on Amazon, that you've got to
Oh
get
no.
through a professional.
Absolutely, absolutely. The things I get from him, I could not get on Amazon at all, and I wouldn't know what to get or how much to take.
Right.
Um, and that's changed over time, because as I get better, I take less stuff. So, we wanted to detox me. So, I went through a process of taking some natural detoxification supplements. And now we're, doing, instead of every day, we're doing every other day. And one of them we've completely cut out. And so we're really in a path right now to minimize the amount of supplements I'm taking from him because I am getting so much stronger. I was at 118 pounds last week. All of my old clothes fit me, and people say, "Oh my God, like you're you. You look like you again."
I
And
saw your before and after picture, which you had sent me a picture back when we were first talking. I mean, face swollen, so sick. And then you sent me a picture one day and you're like, look at the difference. And I couldn't believe it.
I,
So here's a question. Did your gut now, because I know he was treating you for leaky gut, how's your gut right now?
well, you know what? As we experimented with trying to cut back, I mean, it was awesome. I was like a baby. My stomach was perfect, and that's how I gained all the weight.
Hmm.
Mhm. So I was like, well, that particular supplement is expensive. Gary said, let's try to cut it back to every other day. And I did that, and I started having some stomach pains again.
Hmm.
So I spoke to Gary again yesterday, and he said, you know what, let's, just put it up again and let's play around and figure out what the right balance is for you right now. And as
Right.
time goes on, that will change.
Yeah.
But, I'm still in the process of healing my leaky gut, or stopping the supplement wouldn't have caused some of the symptoms to come back.
And right, and you're still taking a benzodiazepine, which can harm the gut. So
Yep.
once you got on everything, you were able to taper the brand of the alprazolam
Yep.
off. You're done with that. You're now
Done.
doing Valium, and you're going slow. It seems to be going well. You're not bedridden. You were able to move and then move a second time. And so I want people to know you went from bedridden to I remember you would text me one time, you're like, "Oh, I'm going swimming and I'm out walking." And I'm thinking, she couldn't even move before. So tell us what your regime is, for your physical therapy that you're doing.
Well, as a result of the alprazolam, I developed one of the side effects is tachycardia.
Mhm.
So after four different cardiologists, I finally got the correct diagnosis of POTS, which stands for post-orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So upon standing, my heart rate goes crazy and my blood pressure, I have what's called hyperpots. You can have hyper or hypo. My blood pressure goes very, very high, like 210 over 100. Other people who have POTS, their blood pressure goes low, and I get very dizzy, and I feel like I'm going to faint. And I have fainted many times in my life. So, like, I know when I'm going to faint. I know the feeling, and I give everyone the warning. I'm going to faint now. And
Mhm.
I fainted on the altar of St. Teresa's Church. So, um,
Mhm.
I, I know the feeling so well. So, in order to treat the POTS, I'm using what's called the Dallas Protocol. It's also called CHOPS, and it's a very strict exercise regimen where for the first 4 months you exercise either lying down or sitting down. So I have a gym at the apartment complex I'm in, and the first exercise I could do was the recumbent bike. And so, I mean, at that point, I wasn't bedridden, I was couch ridden. So I got a portable recumbent bike at Walmart delivered for $30. And that was the beginning of my exercise regime. I had PT come to the house, I had OT come to the house, and 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 that's where the recumbent bike started. And from there, I graduated from that very quickly. Within a week, the muscles in my legs, you could see. My physical therapist was like, wow, look at your legs. You must have been in great shape before you got sick. And I was, I had lifted weights for many, many years and was in awesome shape before all of this happened. So from there, I've graduated to the real gym, and they have a real recumbent bike. And I did 50 minutes on it the other day, the day before yesterday, which is the longest I've ever done. And, I watch my heart rate with an Apple Watch while I'm doing it so it doesn't spike too high. And if it does, I slow down. But I'm I'm gradually increasing. So it's I have to be very disciplined. I can also use the leg press machine. So I've learned, I can do 8 different exercises on that. And I have just begun using the yoga ball, where I sit on the yoga ball and I march and I hold my legs out. And then the third exercise, which is really, really hard, are called wall sits, where you basically lean against the wall in a sitting position without the yoga ball underneath you. So it engages every muscle in your body. And it's exhausting, but I have to do it in order to regain my heart strength. So my heart is a muscle, and just like everything else was weakened from being bedridden, my heart became weakened, and it can't pump the blood to my brain fast enough, and that's where the dizziness and the fainting comes from.
Mhm. So, Lisa, because you are alone now and, everything is on you and it's expensive, and how do you eat? Because I know you eat meticulously. So, I just like people to know, just to give an idea, when you're disabled and you're alone, how are you handling like eating? And you have got, and I also want you to explain to people, so you had PT and OT coming in the house, but you also have the doctor prescribed a helper for you to come in, because we have a lot of people that are very, very sick, and I think it would help if they knew how to talk to their doctor to get help to come in.
Well, fortunately, after the horrible experience I had with the PCP, the one I found within that week when I saw him, he had PT and OT at my house the next day. He had me
Wow.
with the cardiologist 4 days later. And he makes the appointments for me. And he said to me, with you right now, everything is an emergency, so I'll make all the appointments. And he's been wonderful. So having a PCP that supports you is key for sure.
So your new PCP, so this is not the psychiatrist, that's going to let you
Mhm.
taper slowly. You got a new PCP. So it's looking for the right PCP who believes that you're sick
Yep,
from the drugs, your body is breaking down, and that's how he's getting you the help that you need.
exactly. And so he prescribed a personal care attendant, that I'm on because I'm disabled. I'm on Medicare, and Mass Health is my backup, my secondary right now.
Hmm.
And Mass Health will pay 12 hours and 45 minutes a week for a personal care attendant. So I have somebody come about, 2.5 hours a day, who cleans my house. They wash my clothes, they, change my sheets. They, I get most of my food delivered from, I did a lot of research on, I eat all organic, no processed food, nothing artificial. I'm gluten free, dairy free, sugar free. Um, and I get everything delivered from local farms.
Really? How did you do that?
I did a lot of research on the internet, and so the meat I get delivered from Lilac Hedge Farms, out of Ludlow. I get the fruits and vegetables, and they also have other things that they have add-ons. Misfit Foods,
Hmm.
they buy what the supermarkets and restaurants don't buy. So, for example, yesterday I got the biggest sweet potato I've ever seen in my life. It's it's enough to feed. It's got to be big enough to feed 10 people.
Wow.
And so, but you get a box for $22, and it's all organic. And you pick what you want, and then you pick your add-ons. Um,
So it sounds like it's even cheaper than going into a food store and going shopping.
It's absolutely cheaper because they're getting, so for another example is like their avocados are little. Well, I like little avocados because then I can eat the whole thing. And when they're big, the other half always goes bad.
Hmm. True.
So a little
True.
avocado to me isn't a misfit, it's a fit.
Right. So
Um,
that we're here in Massachusetts, and you found that. You just did it by Googling. So you think most people anywhere could do the same thing. What did you just Google for local farms that deliver, and then you
yep.
call to see if they're organic?
Yep. Well, it's all on the internet. I mean, if you have Google, access to Google, you can find anything you need to find. You just have to keep on looking. And really, everything's done over the internet. There's really nobody to call. So
Okay.
if you're not internet savvy, I think it's more of a challenge, and you might need help.
Hmm.
But there's another company called Imperfect Foods, and it's very similar to Misfit Foods, exactly the same. They're competitors. So what I do is I get deliveries from both companies because then I get to see what I like the best, and I like them both because they have different products.
Right. That's those are great ideas that you're giving people.
Yep.
So I have a couple of questions that
Mhm,
I want to ask you.
mhm.
So one, we know when people are tapering, one of the things they worry about is, protracted withdrawal when they're done. They're still tapering, but they're worrying about protracted withdrawal when they're done.
Mhm.
Do you have a fear now of protracted withdrawal?
No,
Yeah, because you're healing while you're tapering, right?
no, I don't have any fear of it at all because I know I mean, I see my body is stronger. I mean, I look at my legs, and the facts are in the way my legs look. They were old lady legs with skin on the bones, and I actually felt on my belly. I can pinch it now, like there's an inch of fat. Like
Right,
there's
right,
something under that skin, and I make my own bone broth, and I drink bone broth all the time, and I think that's part of what's helped my stomach as well.
right. And if people can't make bone broth, I mean, they
You
have
can
them
buy it.
now. You can buy different brands.
Yeah,
They're expensive, but hey, you can buy them. So one of the things, people are hearing you, and we know you've gone from bedridden to you can now even go over to the pool where you live, and
yep,
you're doing exercises. And by no means are you telling people that you're, healthy. You're getting there. You're getting stronger by the day. But
yep.
what has this done with your family and friends? Because I ask a lot of people that, and this is a tough thing that hurts a lot of people.
You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah.
I've lost all my family and friends. I
And
have
isn't that horrible?
I have a few I have a few friends that have stuck with me. But other than that, um, I don't have anybody.
And
Um,
isn't that sad you're going through this alone? I mean, do you use the internet for like the Benzo groups for support, Lisa?
yes, I do, and I help a lot of people because I am getting better. So it makes me feel better to help others.
Right,
Um, and instead of my pain being in vain, if I can help one person,
right.
then maybe it's worth it. It's like in one of my benzo support groups, 3 people died within a month. They killed themselves,
Ugh, yeah.
and
And is it because of they're sick, they're not being understood? There's so many things that we're trying to get the information out there. And I mean, you have fought for yourself, by yourself. So I want somebody listening to this, if you are alone and you have nobody and you don't even have a lot of money, you can still make it. You fought for yourself, right, Lisa?
I have fought for my life, and it is the biggest fight I've ever had in my life, and I've had so many surgeries over my life. I've had I've I was diagnosed with DCIS, a type of stage 0 breast cancer 10 years ago, actually 13 years ago now. Um, I fought several illnesses in my life, but this is the biggest fight I've ever fought and the hardest.
Right.
Um, and it's
And in
it's been the most disabling. I,
Yeah, it
I,
is.
in every possible way, financially, mentally, psychologically, physically. I mean, it's hell. It's a living hell.
Right.
What these drugs make your body feel like. You feel like you're going to die.
Right. Right. But in no way are we saying that the only way to get better is with a functional medicine doctor and taking supplements because we know a lot of people can't. you knew your body had broken down. It wasn't even a question. You knew, and you needed help. I don't think, again, as your psychiatrist, the one that you went into, said you would have died. Your body was falling apart from the drugs. I know when I put out Gary's podcast, somebody said, "How did I know I was sick? Why I took supplements." I'm like, "'Cause I waited 5 years and then I had the test done." I wish I did in the beginning like you did,
Right.
but I didn't. I had leaky gut, candida, malabsorption,
Yeah. Yeah. And
wasted years.
if I didn't, you know, I wish I knew about Gary. Why didn't I go to him, when I was struggling with my PCP and losing all that weight?
Yeah.
And
Me
so
too.
that
I knew about him like 20 something years ago, and even I didn't call him when I was sick. I remember sending somebody to him, but I kept thinking, "Nope, just time. I'm gonna heal." How stupid of me.
Well, I didn't think that anything could help because I just thought, just like the other medications I had been put on for my neck injury, that I could, over time that I would overcome them. I mean, I was on Dilaudid. I was on a very strong opiate, and I got off of that no problem. It was a walk in the park.
Yeah,
And and the fact that I couldn't get off of this, I mean, it what it did to my body, I I couldn't go, I couldn't do it. It was like I was stuck, and nothing I tried was making me any better. I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker and
right.
sicker.
So what would you say to somebody right now, like, some final words, somebody who is tapering, they're sick. Some again, they can make the cuts, they're still working. That's wonderful. I wasn't one of those. What would you say to somebody, your best advice to somebody tapering or that's often still very sick?
Never give up hope because it can be done. It's just going to take time.
Right.
And our bodies have been damaged, and it took a long time for our bodies to get this damaged. It's going to take a long time to heal, and it may take longer to heal than it did to get the damage because you can become dependent upon these drugs within 9 days of usage every day. And it can take you months to recover from the damage that was done in those 9 days.
Correct.
So, I would, the biggest advice I would give people is never give up on yourself, no matter how bad you feel, no matter how alone you are, no matter how much you feel like you're going to die, and your body is trembling or in muscle spasms everywhere, no matter how much pain your body is in because of it, and no matter how screwed up your head feels, and you're not you, and you can't make yourself you. Don't give up on yourself.
Right. That's excellent advice. And one thing when we finished the show with Gary, I did not know that he had a podcast show called Staying Healthy Naturally with Dr. Gary Kracoff, and also that he has a blog at drgaryk.com, which is just drgaryk.com. Did you know he had those?
I did not.
Yeah. So, we're just going to let that out there for everybody to go to either to his podcast or to his blog, because I actually listened to one of his podcasts this morning that I thought was very good. And I checked out the blog, which is also very good. So there's some good information on there for people, even if you can't work with a functional medicine doctor wherever you are. He gives some good advice.
There's free advice out there, like in these support groups. Um, the only one that really understands what it's like to go through this is somebody who's gone through this.
Correct. Right. Right.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of sad stories, like the suicides and the deaths from this drug. But there's also people who come back on and say, I've been off for 5 years and I'm totally normal now. I never thought I'd be normal again,
Yeah.
but I'm better than normal. I'm
That's
better
right.
than 100%. I am.
That's why you don't give up. That's right. I love when people come back into the groups to say, hey, because people get upset when they leave and go off into their lives, which they deserve. But just come back every now and then and encourage others. It means the world to everybody.
Oh, and it feels so good to hear their stories, to hear, what they've accomplished, and what they all say is, I wouldn't change a thing. It was hell. I've been to hell and back, but it's made me a new person. And the
Right.
new person is better than the old me.
That's
And,
right.
even though it was the hardest thing I've ever endured, it's changed me for the better.
Right. And I think it protects our families too. We learn a lot. We help protect our families and our friends. And you know what? For those, when your family and friends have walked away, we've seen that happen over the years, which is tragic. But then there are other times when those family members needed them when they got healthy and they were there for them and they were very sorry for what they did to them. And I hope in your case, there'll be a big reuniting of the family and friends.
We can only hope.
Yeah. Lisa, thank you. I know this was hard to do today because it's very emotional, but I really appreciate you being on today.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all of your help. I never would have found my psychiatrist to support me if it wasn't for you.
Right. I know. I know that
Well,
was a blessing in
you're my
itself when we
you're my
got him.
angel, Geraldine.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I
All
appreciate
right,
it
Lisa.
more than
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
All right, Garrett. So we just finished the show with Lisa, and I know we were supposed to schedule this to do it the day right after we finished Gary, but it's very emotional for her, and it was hard for her to speak publicly because, again, she has lost a lot of family and friends, and you could see that she got very emotional when we talked about that part.
Yeah. I think most of the survivors that we talk to end up getting emotional at some point. Sometimes we leave it in, sometimes we don't. But I think it was important as part of her story that we left in that part.
Right. Well, I still cry from time to time when I'm even interview somebody or afterwards when we've done the post show talk. But one of the things I think that's important is she was deathly ill when she contacted me and she needed some intervention. So we're not saying that everybody needs intervention. She knew she did. And I liked when she mentioned that she's able to get different foods cheaper than in the stores because she's eating organic imperfected looking foods, which that was a great thing for her to mention to anybody that's struggling and wants to eat as healthy as they can. It's she has hope, like she has no fear, and her and I've talked about it, she has no fear whatsoever of protracted withdrawal, which also helps, I think, in her tapering process. It's all about her getting healthy, not worrying about what's to come when she's off. And if there's one thing I could tell people is stop worrying about what's going to happen and just work with today.
Yeah. I think, I don't know because we haven't edited the podcast yet, whether people heard who she was kind of prior to this happening to her, but software consultant, right? And
An entrepreneur.
So.
She's a brilliant girl,
Yeah.
Who trusted her doctor. She did have to have some surgeries done, and that procedure with every 3 weeks to have a benzos and the Vicodin to endure the procedure, then 3 weeks off, then 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. I mean, talk about being kindled. She was on, off, and she was able to come off all of the medication she was ever given for pain, and not this one.
What was the term that you just used? Kindled?
Kindled is when you've taken a drug, come off, go on again, come off, go on again, come off. It's called being kindled. So you think some people think it gets hotter and hotter, but again, I'm going to say something a little differently. I know one of our doctors who tried 4 times to get off, and when he did functional medicine himself, and he built his body up, ate right, took supplements for his body, when he tapered that last time, and I asked him how was it, he goes, I might have had 3 uncomfortable days. Worked through the whole thing, did not get sick. So I don't like when people get scared when they're kindled.
Right. So we're now getting into the holiday season, and we're planning on doing our Surviving the Holidays Part 2.
For 2020.
But this time we're going to do it earlier, because I think last year we did it in December, like prior to Christmas.
Yeah, but after Thanksgiving.
So this time we have 2.5 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Right, and I have been working on it. Now Lisa just gave me some more ideas. Actually, she and I had been talking last week about some ideas to help people. And so we're going to put that out. But I am going to stress, I really would like people, we didn't have episode numbers on them back then. If people could listen to the first one back in December last year, because I say what I did because I was very, very sick, and yet I still had to put out Thanksgiving meals. I still had to put out Christmas meals. So
and make sure you have a sandwich or something before you listen to the episode. You talk about food most of the time, so it's
yeah. So, well, you know what? I could do food. I didn't love it, but I could do food. So if you're listening to this now, I'd appreciate you. Always listen to that one first, because I'm not going to repeat a lot of what I did. We're going to kind of get into some other things for surviving the holidays
so we're not
in
doing food this year.
Oh, we're still going to do where people, what might help them. I can mention a little bit. Really, I'm just going to tell them listen to the one from last year. But it's just things I think to be thankful for, things to so you won't feel alone, and some suggestions of what people can do to get food.
I mean, what a strange holiday season this was compared to so it's difficult. The holidays are always a difficult time for people if you're struggling or whatever's going on in your life. But this year, it's almost everybody's in the same boat with you. The families have had to cancel their Thanksgivings where they're just having it.
We're at the point of not letting your sister and her husband come.
Yeah. So
COVID has hit.
Yeah, everybody's experiencing a different and difficult holiday season this year. So
yeah, and so we want you to know you're not alone. Everybody, even those not going through benzo withdrawal, they are suffering. And now with the counts going up, it's getting more difficult.
Well, in Massachusetts, at least.
Right where we are. So just watch for that. We'll probably put that out next week sometime.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was a great show for anybody who thinks they cannot afford the help or the food or to eat right. She is struggling. She's alone, and she is a fighter. And I have no doubt Lisa will be, probably in another year, you're going to see her absolutely fine and totally drug-free. Another great show. Thank you for helping out, Garrett. And I want to thank you all very, very much for listening each week.